Australia, the leading cause of death for men between 15 and 44 is suicide. Why do you think it's so hard for men to ask for help?
Because we've been taught that asking for help makes us not men. When you raise an entire gender to believe that your identity, your masculinity is tied up in the appearance of strength, then by admitting that you are sad, feeling something, depressed, or needing help, is to then admit that you are not a man. So what's happened is we've created an army, a generational army of boys who are now men who believe that in order to admit that they need help, it would come at the expense of their manhood. It would be trading in their man card, their admittance to a club that doesn't exist. And consequently, we suffer. And we suffer in silence because we're also taught that that's what a man does. We don't complain. We don't ask questions. We don't ask for help. If we're lost, we figure it out. We find our way. Real leaders are not ever lost. They just detour. We know where we're going. We know ourselves. We say we can get through this. We don't burden anybody else with our stuff. We're not taught to ask ourselves how we're feeling or somebody else. Feelings are too much. We just are productive. We're doers, and we'll get through it. Suck it up. Be a man. All of these things we've been hearing our entire lives. What that does, first of all, it puts women down. Number one, because what we're doing is we're saying that the sharing of our vulnerability, the sharing of our weaknesses, makes us girls or gay. So we're putting down women and someone else's sexuality. So we're homophobic in that way, and we're misogynist in the other way. And so we're dehumanizing women at the expense of men. And then that's so ingrained in us by the time we reach, 20, 30, 40, and even older, which is what a lot of the data is showing that men are killing themselves in much older years now. We're so far gone, we don't even know how we feel anymore. We haven't been taught how to forge real male friendships because we're not allowed to talk about anything. Whereas women are taught, at the very least, they're socialized to believe that female friendships are built and rooted in vulnerability, oftentimes, and the sharing. But male friendships, you can go years and years and years and never know anything about a person. You can know how they feel about sports and their teams and politics and news, but you might never hear about a battle that they're fighting or something that's happening in that life. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard from men that, oh, this person lost a father. Oh, I didn't even know. He was fine. He just showed up and golfed that day, or he went to play sports. We don't share these things. And then we're trapped. We trap ourselves in our own armor. This armor that we were told we have to put on to be men to protect ourselves becomes the very thing that suffocates us. And we don't know how to get out of it. So by the time that we are so far depressed that we would take our own lives, the simple act of asking for help or calling a therapist or saying I need someone is so gargantuan. It's like climbing a mountain that's impossible, that it's easier to end it. It's easier to end it because by reaching out, not only would we be admitting that we don't have it figured out, we'd be then sharing that with somebody else and they would know. And that person knowing is even worse for me. And so we see men taking their lives at higher rates than they ever have, in more violent ways than they ever have. And that is a cry for help. And that is an SOS signal saying we got to change something. And at the end of the day, that's why I wrote the book. Yeah, it's like people ask me why I was willing. What made you be willing to be that vulnerable? And it's because of that. It's because if we can save a life, if a man can read this story and realize, oh my God, I am feeling depressed. I need help. It doesn't make me less of a man. That one life can, What can that man do with over the course of his life?
Yeah.
That's why we do it. That's why I did it. That's why I wrote the book. And that's why talking about this stuff is so important, because vulnerability is the real strength.
Yeah.
And everybody and people, and it's not just something that Brene Brown said, or that this person said, or that this person said.
Yeah.
It's not it's actual real strength.
Mm.
The strength it takes for somebody to admit that they don't know the answer, that they're depressed, that they have thoughts of suicide, the appearance of having it all together. I just heard yesterday that the tennis pro in my local town, in my local community here where I live, the former tennis pro had it all together, and one day they didn't show up for work because he killed himself.
Yeah.
Just nobody knew. He was totally fine. Well, turns out he had gotten a divorce, and the wife had taken custody of the kids, and he couldn't deal with it anymore. He couldn't do it. He felt like he lost everything. Boom, ends his life. All that man needed was a real friend.
Yeah.
To come over to his house and to say, hey, I see you.
Mm.
God, you must be in pain. Let's talk. But we don't have that as men. We're not given that gift. We don't know how to be that for each other. All we know how to do is fucking compete with each other. And that's what we have to change.
Absolutely. And that's why your book is so important